Welcome to the Security Weekly News Wrap-Up for the week of 14 June. It's the middle of June already. Can you believe that? Show news, eBay thugs, Ripple 20, T-Mobile, Zoom, and the call might just be coming from inside the house. All this and more on the Security Weekly News Wrap-Up. And yes, my awesome stylist Jill is back in business at last.
This is Security Weekly. For security professionals, by security professionals.
We interrupt our program to bring you this important message.
It's the show that keeps you up to date on the latest security news twice a week. Your trusted source for accurate security information and expert analysis. It's time for Security Weekly News. As technology continues to evolve and expand, so have the countless ways our critical systems can be put in jeopardy. Ransomware attacks, misconfiguration, user error, and malicious threat actors, to name a few. As IT infrastructures continue to grow and diversify, how do you ensure stable security? Core Security, a help systems company, provides an analytics-driven, layered approach to security with a portfolio that enables both proactive and reactive responses. With Core Security, you can reduce risk by limiting access, detect upcoming and active threats, test for security weaknesses, and efficiently monitor data for actionable insights. To learn more, visit securityweekly.com/core security. The question is simple. Have any of the systems on my network been compromised? The answer is harder than it should be. Enter AI Hunter. Active Countermeasures has automated and streamlined techniques used by the best pen testers and threat hunters in the industry to create AI Hunter, a network threat hunting solution that does the first pass of a hunt for you to identify systems that are most likely to be compromised and scores the results on a scale from 0 to 100. You can then research those systems in depth with AI Hunter. Focus your valuable time on the systems that need your expertise with AI Hunter. Sign up for a personal demo today at securityweekly.com/ACM.
All right. I'm Doug White from Roger Williams University. I'm your host, and welcome to the Security Weekly News Wrap-Up Show. First, let's wrap up all the show topics for the week. On Application Security Weekly number 111, Mike, Matt, and John had an interview with Michelle Dennedy, the CEO of Drumwave. That segment was it was a quite interesting segment about how data use is evolving and how data is being managed and all these kind of things like that. I like that a lot. It was a pretty interesting topic to me. On Business Security Weekly number 176, Paul, Jason, and Matt had an interview with Louis Dunsworth. He's the CEO at Newspire. This segment was about the financial burdens associated with COVID-19, and in particular, it was about how budgets got cut because as they transitioned to work at home, at the same time business was falling off, they were being asked to transition to work at home in terms of security and IT, and then as everybody starts to try to reopen, now they've got budget shortfalls, and it's going to impact all the above. Very timely, certainly, at the university where I work, there's a lot of conversations around these kind of things about we had to do all this sudden stuff. It changed up how the budget worked for this year, and now all that's impacting budgets going forward. So definitely something worth checking out. On Enterprise Security Weekly number 188, John, Matt, and Paul had an interview with Farah Mabatuna. I always screw his last name up. Sorry, Farah. The CEO at NetSparker, who we know really well. I just know it's Farah. So this interview was about DAST, SAST, and IAST. Now, I don't know how to say the last one, IAST. But if you don't know what those are, well, you probably should watch the interview. But hint, it's about the various types of application security testing, like dynamic application security testing while apps are actually running live. Farah is always great, and you probably do need to know about DAST and SAST, and I had to look up IAST because I wasn't as familiar with that, but I did look it up. A second interview on that show was with Jason Fruga, the Vice President of Business Application Cybersecurity at Jason Fruga. And the interview was discussing, and you're going to like this, was discussing SAP and other ERP applications like Oracle, eBusiness, and how the custom nature of these things is a gateway to blind spots in security. I really like this topic because so often I get from people that are talking to me, or I'm a consultant or whatever, you hear this thing like, oh, our RACF system is impenetrable. I was talking to somebody about that the other day, and you're just like, maybe. But you get that from people. It's just this fallacy of security through obscurity. You hear that a lot in ICS. So even if you're not using SAP or Oracle, all this is about ICS and so forth is all true, so you should check that out. On the Security Weekly News number 43, Bob Erdman, the Senior Manager of Product Management at Core Security joined me to talk about ransomware and some strategies to prevent ransomware. So we were having a pretty good time. We obviously could have done several weeks worth of content about ransomware, but Bob did it in 10 minutes, so you should check it out. It was a nice little conversation. On Security and Compliance Weekly number 32, Jeff, Matt, Josh, and Scott in their first segment asked a question. So they didn't have a guest. It was just them. And as if, those four weren't enough to take care of quite a bit of time. The question they asked in the first segment was, what is an InfoSec professional? So as you might guess, they all had an opinion, and that probably could be another couple of weeks worth of argument. And then the second segment was another question that I get all the time, which was, how do I become an InfoSec professional with limited resources? Which applies to most everyone. So yeah, it's definitely something you probably have either asked yourself, been asked by someone that you know, or at least you've thought about that before, or you've got an argument with somebody about it, about what is an InfoSec professional. On Paul's Security Weekly, alas, there is no Paul's Security Weekly this week. Sorry. Even the Security Weekly crew gets an occasional vacation despite the constant shrieking demands from upper management at Pulse Security Weekly. You know who you are. But jump on the Discord server tonight if you're lonely and bored, and I'm sure some of us will be around because we'll be lonely and bored too. All that and the news on that show. So tonight, I guess I'll just be sitting in my office despondent from lack of PSW and worrying about getting the shakes from it. I don't know if you get withdrawal from PSW, but you might. It's been a while since I haven't either been on the show or watched the show on Thursday night, so I don't know. Maybe like, hey, man, I couldn't get any PSW this week. All right. My favorite thread of the week is going to be eBay thugs. If you watch me talking about this on Tuesday, I went back and watched it, even though I hate listening to me, but I really just couldn't get enough of this story. It was just crazy. It sounds like the plot of a Netflix series. It was really like Tiger King in the tech world or something. So if you missed it on Tuesday, basically what went on was the security team, and I don't mean Barney and Goober. I mean like the senior security personnel at eBay, and all their names are in the article if you want to read all that. They all decided to get all zero dark 30 on a couple of people from, wait for it, Natick, Massachusetts, which is like a known hotbed of dissent against eBay. Now, this couple apparently runs an e-commerce newsletter, which sounds like it's not very much, but apparently it's a worldwide publication, although, everything we put on the internet is worldwide. I mean, the World Wide Web and all that. So apparently the hapless couple wrote some bad reviews of eBay, and in 2019, some executive who was not named in the article sent a text to one of the security people that said, "Take them out." Really? And the hijinks began. So they start off with like harassment and doxing and all the usual, hacka type stuff that people do. To get even with people that badmouth them on the internet, and I don't even know what all was listed there. But then it got weirder, and this is where the Tiger King stuff sort of. Just the fact that these senior people at eBay were doing this at all, even just like harassment, was bad. But then they started doing stuff like sending them live cockroaches. They sent them a bloody pig mask through the mail. They sent them a funeral wreath. And so you go, now it's getting all Tiger King sounding. And, it's like you expect some guy with a lot of missing teeth and a crack pipe to be sitting there going, yeah, then we seen him. But then it got even weirder. So then one of the people on the team, who was an ex-police officer, went to Natick, posed as someone who's trying to help them stop the harassment, and he was really collecting information on them. And then more of the team went. So these senior people are like, oh, you know what? We're all going to Natick, Mass. We're going to fix these guys. They broke into their garage and put GPS trackers on them, on and on and on. The only thing missing was the meth and the Tigers and Carol Baskin. Yeah, it's a family show. Anyway, now everyone is fired and under indictment for everything from conspiracy to loitering to, I don't know, illegal use of noble gases or something. I don't know. But What's the moral of this sad tale? Well, maybe if you start feeling like this, just take a breath occasionally and ask yourself, is what I'm doing crazy, illegal? You should ask yourself that a lot, I guess, but is this something I would see on Tiger King? Or, what would Josh Marpet or Dave Kennedy or some of the really nice people in the world do? Wow. I mean, I just couldn't get over that story. It soaked up my whole, week. I was just like, I can't, but they should make a series out of it. So if you're out there and you want me to play somebody, I could play anybody you want. Anyway, so despite the eBay story, then there is other news this week. I'm going to lead with the Ripple 20. We talk about IoT all the time, and that's not even to mention IIoT. So just the Internet of Things, not the industrial Internet of Things, which is also very important. All these ubiquitous devices are just really quickly proliferating. Pretty much everything from your home to your office to the street cam to your car, drones, pacemakers, insulin pumps, all these kind of things all are becoming part of Internet of Things or IoT. So TREC, TCP/IP, is a library stack that is widely used due to being small, fast, and reliable. I mean, pretty much all the traits you might want in an IoT TCP/IP stack. And as such, a lot of IoT devices have used this stack. So JSoft, which is an Israeli cybersecurity consulting company, disclosed 19 vulnerabilities in the TREC stack. After they did report them to TREC first and gave TREC a chance to fix them all. And TREC did prepare a fix of this. But I won't get into all the different compromises, but you can read them in the article if you're interested. But the real issue to me remains, how are all these devices going to get patched in your organization? How many do you have? How many are vulnerable? What version are they running? And do you even know? And can you even find out? How many do your employees have with them at any moment? Do you have employees that have put IoT devices in their workspace, on your network, at home, connected to the VPN to your network? I mean, and on and on and on. So this is back to that API problem we've been talking about for a long time. And as code becomes more modular, you're going to see more and more of this kind of stuff and less ability to control, discern, and evaluate exactly what's going on under the hood of that device, because it's just going to be this big ball of code, and who knows who wrote it or what it does, and how do I fix it when it doesn't work correctly. So a lot of issues that came out of Ripple 20. At the same time, I will re-mention this other one, which is this universal plug and play vulnerability called Call Stranger. The name, from what I read, was from the call is coming from inside the house. And if you don't know, that common phrase, I always like to tell people, originated, at least the first time I ever saw that phrase used, was in the 1974 film Black Christmas, which is actually a pretty good horror movie. It's really old. Margot Kidder's in it. It's pretty cool. But the vulnerability affects Windows 10 and other devices that are connected to systems that use universal plug and play. Now, the flaw was posted by CERT as CVE 2020-12-695, and it is found in, they said, billions of UPnP devices. Wow. Now, UPnP is pretty old, and I mean, they've obviously updated it and whatnot, but it's basically something that we see more and more with the addition, again, of IoT devices, because as more of these devices start worming their way into our networks and enterprises, the convenience and simplicity often, outmaneuver the security issue. And UPnP allows us to exchange information about these devices with other devices on the network. I mean, that was sort of the whole point of it, was to just try to make it simpler for a device to say, hi, I'm a HP printer, I'm sitting on the network, here's some stuff about me, so that other devices could collect that information and move on. Now, malware like Mirai, botnet, has been around a while, and that was another case where something took advantage of universal plug and play. Call Stranger exploits a flaw in the subscribe function of UPnP, and that subscribe function is part of the I guess API for UPnP that monitors changes in devices. So They can use this then to create exploits which allow bypassing the data loss prevention systems. Which would let you exfiltrate data out of the network. It allows for botnet-style distributed denial of service attacks, internal scanning of ports remotely. There was a whole stack of stuff that could be done with this. There is a patch, but you have to put it in place on all these devices, and they have to be patchable, or you have to turn off universal plug and play. And all of those have issues with them, but UPnP has long been a source of threats. Everybody has definitely always been pressuring people to turn it off. It's definitely another wake-up call for these kind of protocols that are floating around in networks and all these devices that we have been adding to these networks in the hundreds, maybe thousands, that all could be a source of a new threat vector when something like this UPnP threat emerge. Along the same lines, Akamai reported that what is maybe the largest distributed denial of service ever in early June. The bandwidth on this thing topped 1.44 terabytes per second. And this was around 385 million packets per second. And that was followed by a second attack, which topped 500 gigabits per second. Akamai did not reveal who the targets were, but they said they thought it was based around some of the social issues. Now, they didn't say which ones, so it was hard to tell where this went on. But the attack used a wide variety of types. It included ACKs, SYNs, UDPs, NTPs, TCPs, TCP resets, SSDP, floods, and there were even other attacks embedded in it. And it was larger than the Mirai botnet attack, which maxed at about 600 gigabits per second when that thing ran. So this was apparently sourced worldwide. So they said it came from all over. So it was multiple examples of an evolving distributed denial of service world in that regard. In the same light, a T-Mobile outage on Monday was being reported by conspiracy sites as everything from the beginning of World War IV to an invasion of intelligent gas from Pluto. The outage was reported to be a distributed denial of service by those same conspiracy sites, but T-Mobile made a tweet announcement in the middle of all this that said it was an IP traffic issue that was issued by the CEO, saying that traffic issue caused the outage. By Tuesday, T-Mobile actually reported that it was an IP traffic storm triggered by a fiber circuit failure. And all this started to sound more like it made more sense to me than some kind of crazy conspiracy. A fiber circuit failure at a third-party provider in the southeastern United States. The redundancy that was designed into the third-party system created the traffic issue, and basically it started to sound to me almost like a layer 2, like flood, where because of loops in the network, that kind of stuff, like spanning tree errors, that it was something along those lines. They didn't give a lot of details about exactly what went on. Service was restored by 2300 on Monday evening. They were back up. The reason I immediately, and other people said it probably wasn't a distributed denial of service, was simply because there was no evidence of it anywhere. It was like, it was for something that massive to occur, you would expect to see collateral damage, in and around these networks, if nothing else, and there was nothing like that going on. After a lot of fallout from the announcement that Zoom would not provide end-to-end encryption to free users, they reversed this decision and decided to make the end-to-end encryption across the entire platform for all users if it's free, except you have to provide a phone number to be validated. Zoom, now, if you don't, a lot of people heard this and they got all up in arms, but Zoom is encrypted. So the stream flowing across the internet was encrypted. But at the endpoint, so at Zoom or at your end, it wasn't encrypted. So this end-to-end encryption encrypts everything between the people in the meeting. So the decryption only occurs within the meeting. And the reason that they were sort of debating on this was because they originally said that they wanted to help law enforcement and the FBI to investigate people who were Zoom bombing or doing other kind of things and attacking meetings. And if it was encrypted all the way from end to end, there was no way anybody could see what was going on. I'm guessing they got a lot of flack from that. I saw arguments on both sides for and against Zoom's restriction. My own personal feeling on it was, if you need it for the private users, why do you not have it for the free users? If you don't need it for the free users, then why have it at all? I personally am glad they put it in. It does create some other issues for forensics and stuff like that, but I did think at least be consistent. And finally, Senator Sherrod Brown, a Democrat from Ohio, wants to pass legislation about privacy policies. Now, if you've never seen the South Park episode, which is like episode 1 in season 15 of South Park, it's called Human Centipede. You might want to go. You might want to go watch that if you have a strong stomach. South Park was basically making fun of something that we all do all the time, which is to just click OK when we get these statements and we install something. So you install this new app. And immediately it says you must agree to our service requirements, you must agree to our user agreement, you must agree that you understand this and you understand that, and you have the right to remain silent if you give up that right. All that stuff that you have to agree to, and we usually just click OK. And there's always those troublesome apps that make you drag all the way to the bottom of the 100 pages before you click OK, and then you just drag as fast as you can. I've even seen them where you couldn't drag too fast. You had to drag like the average reading speed of a third grader, to the bottom of all this stuff. But we've all skipped those 19 pages of legalese associated with when you wanted to install something. And the South Park episode was, of course, about somebody just agreeing to it and then them basically being able to force you to of exactly what you're agreeing to and what it all means in your locale. It gets kind of challenging and frustrating, and also gets a little bit scary because you're going, wow, maybe I should have read that 36-page document that was attached to that little game I downloaded. Primarily, one of the things in the United States that this all revolves around, of course, is selling your data. So you've agreed to let them sell, they can collect all kinds of things about you and sell it. So everything you try to do anymore, whether it's buying a new car or filling out a credit app so you can buy a Japanese sex robot, or wait, what does that say? Okay, yeah, I know. But anything you want to do, you have to click OK. So Senator Brown called it out, and he said no one reads this stuff. And he's probably an attorney. He's at least a senator. But we're expected to. And so this is what he was saying. And so it's assumed that we not only read it, but that we understood it because we clicked OK, that we read it and understood it, even though we probably didn't. So Brown is proposing that companies can only take data from us when it is strictly necessary. It didn't define. I haven't read the whole act, so I don't know what that means. But the act is called the Data Accountability and Transparency Act, and it is available in draft form. So you can get that from his site or from the Congress site, or if you want. And it alleges to shift the burden for reading all this from the consumer to the company. This has been debated for decades in the United States Congress, and considering the current state of affairs, I'm not hopeful. But check it out in the links, and you can see if maybe something like it's going to get passed. And that's a news wrap-up for the week of 14 June 2020 in the time of plague. I'm Doug White from the RD Online Cybersecurity Program at Roger Williams University, and we won't see you next week because the network actually is going to shut down for a week so we can have a holiday. But we'll see you the week after that. Read the science and stay safe. Thanks.